Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order for Monday, December 12th. I do need a motion to approve the agenda and addendum for the December 12th meeting, please. Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? Unanimous. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We are going to head into a closed meeting. The recommendation is that we're heading into the closed meeting to approve council minutes from December 5th, to receive a confidential report from Colleen Butler, town solicitor, regarding the vaccine policy, which relates to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. We also have two information requests from myself, Mayor Post, on personnel matters, public office holders. Both state that personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations. Can I please have a motion to go into closed? Councillor Stevens and Councillor Prendergast, all in favor? Carried unanimously. We will head into closed. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Somebody's is on. Here we go. We're good. Welcome to the meeting of December 12th of Orangeville Town Council. Can I get everyone to rise for our national anthem, please?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, everyone. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and/or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until Chair requests comments or questions from the public. We do have an item for Rise and Report. That the recommendation is that the 2022 December 5th closed council minutes be approved, and that the confidential report from Colleen Butler, town solicitor, regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, be received, and that information provided regarding the information request from Mayor Post on personnel matters, public office holder regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations, be received, and that the information provided regarding information request from Mayor Post on personnel matters, public office holder regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations, be received, and that staff proceed as directed. Can I have a motion to that, please? Councillor Stevens, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor. All in favor? And that's carried. We do have a recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be approved. Items 10.1 through 10.6, which is council meeting minutes from November 21st, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 28th, and December 5th. Be received. Can I have a motion for that? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Thank you. I will turn it over now. We have our presentations, petitions, and delegations. Our first one is Rob Coco, President of Orangeville Hydro, and he's joined by Amy Long, Chief Financial Officer, and Bob Long, Board Chair. Over to you, Mr. Coco.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council, and congratulations on your electoral success. I wanted to thank you for the previous council for reappointing me for a final 3-year term, and in particular for the 3 new members who've been appointed in the last couple of years, 3 highly qualified individuals who have enabled us to achieve our diversity goals. And finally, I want to thank the previous boards and executives for their excellent succession plan. Rob and Amy were well-groomed and highly qualified to assume their positions as President and Chief Financial Officer. They will ensure continued very effective management. I think you're aware that Orangeville Hydro pays the town dividends, and since 2000, The dividends amount to about $21.5 million. We're very pleased to present our business plan tonight, and that'll be handled by Rob and Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you, and it's great to be here in person with council. And also congrats to all council members on your recent election appointments, wins. So, well, congrats. So, yeah, thank you, Bob, for those kind words. As mentioned, my name is Rob Coco, President of Orangeville Hydro, with Amy Long, Chief Financial Officer. We're, of course, here to present our 2023 to 2027 business plan, which is within the board package, or within the package tonight. We'll summarize a bit of an introductory. Why are we even here? The reason we're here to present the business plan starts within our unanimous shareholders agreement. The unanimous shareholders agreement is a tri-party agreement between the town of Orangeville, the town of Grand Valley, the two shareholders, and the corporation, Orangeville Hydro. Section 7.1 of the business plan states that we need to present it to council for approval. And so that's why we're here in the town's capacity as the shareholder to approve our business plan. So what is Orangeville Hydro? We are the local distribution company for the town of Orangeville and the town of Grand Valley. Our longstanding mission is to provide safe, reliable, and efficient delivery of electrical energy while being accountable to our shareholders, the citizens of the town of Orangeville and the town of Grand Valley. Our history goes back to 1917 as the Hydroelectric Commission of the town of Orangeville. Orangeville Hydro is licensed by the Ontario Energy Board to operate as an electric utility within the current boundaries of the town of Orangeville and the former village of Grand Valley. The Grand Valley service area used to look a little bit different, but we've had successful service area amendments, which has allowed us to grow our service territory in Grand Valley beyond its original size. In addition to being the electrical distribution company for the town of Orangeville and the town of Grand Valley, we also provide water and wastewater billing services, as well as streetlight maintenance as well. From a customer perspective, Orangeville Hydro has 7 main customer classes. They're on the screen there. Is residential, general service less than 50 kilowatts, general service greater than 50 kilowatts, small businesses and large businesses, sentinel lights, street lights, unmetered scattered loads, such as some traffic items and some communication, like the traffic lights and the communication boxes that are powered and too small to meter, as well as we have 42 generation sites. So those are mostly rooftop solar, as well as one wind turbine over at Island Lake Public School. Otherwise, they're mostly rooftop solar and one ground mount solar as well. From a customer base, Orangeville Hydro is a steadily growing residential customer base with new subdivisions coming online in Grand Valley, as well as subdivisions coming online in the town of Orangeville. There's also redevelopment and intensification, not just more single detached homes, but as you know, a few homes get knocked down and more townhomes end up in their place. That intensification in both communities actually is good sort of from a utility perspective, because our existing infrastructure ends up providing more, having more customers connected to it. So it's more efficient use of our existing infrastructure. Orangeville Hydro also has a diverse commercial sector, and as well as large industrial customers within the plastics and food manufacturing sector. Orangeville Hydro's corporate performance is tracked by the Ontario Energy Board. All electric utilities have a comparable scorecard. Our historical performance is shown on the Ontario Energy Board website and our own year over year. The scorecard tracks our performance in a few areas: service quality, customer satisfaction, safety, system reliability, asset management, cost control, connection of renewable connections, and of course, financial. Within these categories, there's 21 specific measures. Won't go through all of those, but the scorecard does show that Orangeville Hydro is meeting or exceeding our industry targets in most categories, as well as our historical targets are trending in the appropriate direction. And of course, it's our maintain throughout this business plan and throughout the next year to maintain these results and this performance. Just in the essence of time. So looking forward into 2023, we do in this show a variety of customer counts on this table. For those following the actual plan, it's on page 15 of the business plan. And what I'd like to point out is since 2019, you'll see on the residential near the top that the variable rate, the sort of our revenue that would fluctuate based on how much your home uses, has been put to zero, and all of our revenue comes from the fixed service charge. Now that transition for all electric utilities in the province provided stable revenue by not having fluctuating year-to-year revenue for electric utilities, as well as kept homeowners' electric bills stable as well and predictable. Down in the right-hand corner, you'll see that the 2023 distribution revenue forecasted for Orangeville Hydro is 6.1 million. These distribution revenues fund our capital expenditures, our operating maintenance and administrative costs, as well as our debt repayments, and of course, our dividends as well. So the capital spending, what do we mean by that? That's our big construction projects. We complete those projects in order to ensure that the existing customers have reliable power, as well as ensure that we can connect new customers and ensure we can serve our existing customers' growth, load growth. As time goes on, our infrastructure does have some wear and tear due to the elements and aging. So we're also replacing existing infrastructure and expanding to connect new customers. We break our projects down into 4 categories. System access means connecting new customers, whether that is a subdivision, a new commercial customer, renewable customer, storage. All of that goes under our system access, as well as if we need to relocate any of our plant due to road construction as well, goes under the system access category. Replacing aged or failed assets, that goes under system renewal. So system renewal would be like our pole replacements, our transformer replacements, our major component replacements all go under the system renewal category. System service ends up being, the vast majority of projects is our voltage conversion program, where our old 4.16 kilovolt system, which has served its life, is upgraded and renewed to 27.6 kV. Now, that's program, the voltage conversion program, started in 1989 and it continues to today. And within our next 5 years, we do hope to complete that program. So for 2023 projects, where that renewal will be the Parkview area. Throughout 2022, significant amount of duct structure went in alongside Whiteman as Avertex was putting fiber in the ground to serve that subdivision, which was from the 1970s. We also took the opportunity to install duct at the same time to avoid, in a few years, likely using the same contractor to disrupt the same lawns that Avertex was just there for. So when we return in 2023 to discuss our 2022 annual report, we'll go more in depth into the projects of 2022. And of course, for anybody looking at the graph on the screen, you'll see that the system service, the gray area, is drastically larger. And that was because of that one time to ensure we install a lot more duct than we normally do, because the contractor was already on those streets. So now that the duct is in the road, we'll be continuing replacing the transformers, pulling primary cable, and upgrading the electrical infrastructure within the Parkview Heights subdivision. So our capital projects altogether for 2023 are 2.2 million. Looking over the next 4 years after that, they range from 2.3 million to 1.5 million. I'll allow Amy to move on to our operating, maintenance, and administrative expenditures.
Thanks, Rob. Let's move this over a bit. Okay, so you can see on table 14 of your business plan, which is page 25, the OM&A expenses by year and type. So that's our operating, maintenance, and administration expenses. In 2023, our budget is 3.8 million. So this budget did include a 3% increase within the budget for most of our expenses, other than compensation, which was increased based on the collective agreement salary rates. And then in the forecast, looking out 2024 to 2027, we assumed an increase for most operating costs of 2.5% per year. So just an explanation. So the operating and maintenance expenses, we combine those together, and those mainly include labor, contractor, and material costs relating to inspecting, testing, patrolling our distribution equipment, such as substations, transformers, meters, poles, that sort of thing. These costs also include engineering expenses and a portion of our IT costs. Also for planned maintenance work, such as vegetation management, as well as reactive work, when we're responding to power outages or assisting customers with service upgrades. So those are all included in the operations and maintenance costs. And then moving to billing and collecting expenditures, those include the labor, contractor, and material costs relating to our customer service staff. Also stationery postage and our bill printing costs to send the bills out to our customers. It includes a portion of our IT costs and our smart metering costs, as well as our billing system operating costs. That's a big portion of our billing and collecting costs. And then moving to administration costs. So those include the labor, contractor, and material costs relating to our board of directors, our senior management, our finance and regulatory staff, as well as, again, a portion of our IT costs and benefits, training, building maintenance costs, association membership fees, our regulatory costs, and also outside consultants are all included in the administration area of the OM&A expenses. And then looking to the OM&A cost per customer. So we do compare ourselves to the provincial average. And in 2021, our cost per customer were $268. And historically, we have been consistently below the provincial average for our OM&A cost per customer. This is mainly due to our steadily increasing customer base, and then our OM&A costs staying fairly steady over the years. And then moving to customers per employee. So this is table 17 on page 28. So Orangeville Hydro does operate quite lean with a lean number of employees. So we rank 22nd in the province with 640 customers per employee. So the provincial average is lower at 592 customers per employee. We do expect in 2023 to employ 20 full-time employees. This number is expected to remain consistent for over the next few years, until through succession planning, we return to 19 employees. And then this is the last slide. This is always lots of data on here, but the last slide I'll be speaking to this evening. So it's our financial forecast summary. So just starting at the top, our energy sales. This is our pass-through commodity costs that we pay mainly to the ISO and Hydro One. These are our big bills that we pay every month. And we've budgeted those to increase by 2% year over year. We base these conservatively on the 2021 electricity sales, which we did see lower revenues in 2021 as compared to 2020, but these were more in line with historical. And then looking at distribution revenue on the next line, the distribution revenue is used to fund our OM&A expenses, as well as our capital projects and our debt financing obligations. So our distribution revenue is expected to increase in 2023 due to forecasted customer growth, as well as inflationary rate increase based on our rate application that is with the Ontario Energy Board currently. And then beyond 2023, our distribution revenue is planned to increase by 2% to increase by future customer growth, as well as future inflation-based rate increases. And then going to OM&A expenses. So as I mentioned, our OM&A expenses are forecast to increase by 2.5% throughout the timeline of the business plan for the majority of the expenses, other than a 2.5 to 3% increase in 2023. And then going down to total debt. So in 2024, in our plan, we've planned to borrow $2 million in 2024 and then an additional $2.5 million in 2026. This is to sustain our capital projects and also to fund regulatory related payments, which we pay to specifically Hydro One and the ISO for our low voltage network and connection charges. These typically increase more significantly than we're able to collect from our customers. And then they're also fluctuating power and global adjustment rates to the ISO. And then just looking at our debt to equity ratio. So in 2023, it's 54 to 46, which is a small deviation from the OEB deemed structure of 60-40. And then as Bob had mentioned, in regards to dividends, so we have paid Orangeville Hydro, or sorry, the town of Orangeville, our shareholders, and the town of Grand Valley, almost 21.7 million since 2000. So that's 21.2 million to the town of Orangeville and 513,000 to the town of Grand Valley. And then in our business plan, we have forecasted just over 2 million in shareholder dividends over the next 5 years out to 2027. So I'll pass it back to Rob just for the final couple of slides.
Everything we've presented so far was what was within the business plan, and it's as approved by our board of directors at Orangeville Hydro. There was an item in there that's materially impactful that we want to bring to our shareholders' attention, and it's the assurance of their voluntary compliance from the Ontario Energy Board and a rebate that's coming back to our customers. So it wasn't written in the business plan. This business plan was written and approved back in October. 10 days ago on December 2nd, we received our assurance of voluntary compliance from the Ontario Energy Board regarding an overbilling charge. And so we're going to be refunding our customers in December on their December bills that they'll receive in a couple weeks. And then they're not due until January 15th. So this is the bill for the November consumption. So back earlier this year, the Ontario Energy Board and multiple LDCs, or electric utilities like Orangeville Hydro, was brought to our attention of a billing error within a configuration of our billing system. Fixed charges are, the charge you pay per month. The billing system was turning that into a daily rate. And when that daily rate, assuming 30 days in a bill, 30 days in a month, equaled 360 over the year, but with 365, there's 5 extra days of billing that was occurring. So it ends up being approximately 1.4% overcharges. So we're giving back 4 years worth of overcharges back to our customers in 1 month as soon as possible, which is December 2nd, the ABC was completed, and we're now doing it likely around December 20th, 21st when the bills go out. So again, at the time of writing the original business plan, these numbers weren't known. It's going to be a $265,000 rebate to customers. The breakdown by customer count is on the screen, with $18.83 to a residential customer. General service, the larger customers are more, and then it's a different amount for our street lights and unmetered scattered loads. So this is something that will be in detail within our annual report, which comes in the summer. And it'll, of course, be on our 2022 audited financial statements of with a lower distribution revenue as the rebate is going back to customers within the 2022 calendar year. Upon finding the error, the bills were corrected. The billing system was corrected immediately. Ourselves along, and so far there's about 9 LDCs that the assurance of voluntary compliances have been publicly released, and there's more to come likely in the coming months. And so this is something that we would have preferred to have within the business plan, but due to timing, it was unknown when it would occur and the exact amount. So this will be built into the annual report that you'll see in the summer. So with that, on behalf of everyone at Orangeville Hydro, the board of directors and staff, do appreciate your time tonight. I believe we are over time. So this will conclude our comments, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokok. You did very well staying within your time. Was there questions? Okay, Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good evening to Mr. Long, Mr. Kokok, and Ms. Long, too, as well. Really nice to have you here, and your report is always thorough with a lot of information. I'm glad you were able to provide us with some clarity on the compliance piece, but that is not really the intent of the questions. I have 2, Your Worship. One of which you identified, of course, a variety of different projects. And, the objective of some of these projects is to fulfill some of the growth that we have in our community. And I was really interested in hearing some of the things that you said about piggybacking on what Whiteman is doing. But this was predominantly in 2022. Phase number 2 or 3 of Whiteman's plan is to, of course, hit other parts of our community with their fiber optic installation. Is there a thought, or has there been communication for you to also piggyback on some of that? And is it reflected in the 2023 and onward expenditures?
Thank you for bringing that up. So this will be a major project for Orangeville Hydro as well. So we won't go everywhere Whiteman goes, mainly because the existing, the town of Orangeville, or let me back up. So since 1988, going back to then, we have been installing our new distribution system in duct with the appropriate cabling. So in the subdivisions that have been constructed from 1989 forward, we won't need to dig where Whiteman ends up going. It's the subdivisions that, and also the subdivisions that we've, for the last 30-ish years, have already been working on converting. We've been installing duct, and so we already have it there. So we'll only be piggybacking this on the specific subdivisions that we don't have duct or the appropriate cable already there. So we've seen a brief, like a couple-year plan for Whiteman, and so we do know where we will be joining them in that. But we've seen the rest of Orangeville sort of grayed out as future years, and so we're not sure exactly where and when they'll be. But we will piggyback when it makes sense and if we need the duct. Just generally, if you'd like to know, the majority of areas that are left will be that are underground. Big one will be sort of the Meadow, Passmore, that area. Late 80s, but
yes.
Just built Kensington, Elm. Some of those underground older subdivisions are the areas that we will be wanting to join them.
Okay, thank you. If I may, just to follow up, as you see society also embracing, and we also have our different levels of government supporting EV. We've had several discussions about EV adoption. And so we have some new subdivisions that are moving in. And is it an obligation, and I'm looking just for clarity on this, is it an obligation for any developer to provide enhancements or rough-ins for EV charging? Or is it the obligation of the hydro system? Or just for my sake and maybe others that may be watching this evening?
Councillor Andrews, you've hit a nerve. So there was a brief period, and the chief building official would know this well. There was a brief period under a prior government that there was a building code obligation for a 200 amp panel to go into the new construction homes and a rough-in for EV chargers. That was shortly removed. It was a very, very short-lived building code obligation. And so right now there is no obligation for new homes to have a 200 amp panel or the rough-in for electric vehicle chargers. It's something that can cause curiosity from us on it, because there'll be new homes built, and then shortly after the homeowner moves in, we're coming back there to disconnect the home temporarily while an electrician is ripping out the young 100 amp panel to put in a 200 amp panel. And of course, all the rough-in has to occur as well at that time. So it's something that we do hope, personally hope that comes back, that new homes are built with the appropriate sized panel to be ready for electric vehicle charger. And of course, while all of that home is being built, to bring a rough-in for an electric vehicle charger as well. But there's no obligation at the moment.
So where I was going with this is Orangeville Hydro prepared for the potential increase of utilization of the adoption of EVs?
Oh, EV adoption is something that is a constant discussion in every room we go in these days. It used to be something that would come up every year, then once every 6 months. It's now every month. It's now every week.
Okay.
The Ontario Energy Board is having a big focus directed from the provincial government to ensure the province is ready. The electric utilities across the province are ready for EV adoption. And of course, our industry associations, whether that be the Canadian Standards Association for the electrical standards, and our own provincial standards through Utility Standards Forum, ensuring that we design our system EV ready. But it's not just EVs that we're thinking about. So as mentioned, we have intensification occurring in both jurisdictions. Yeah. That's load growth. Yes. We have a reduction of fossil fuel usage for building heat targets coming up. So that's electric heat pumps are coming up more and more. So that's now not just your air conditioner running in the summer. It'll be a heat pump running for much more hours in the winter. So that's building heat coming our way. And so it's all of these load growth, more electric usage coming, bigger demand on our systems at a time when our systems are strained more and more due to weather impacts, hotter summers, cooler winters, but we're becoming more and more of an essential service and so it's a constant discussion. The IES, the Independent Electricity System Operator, and Hydro One, and all local distribution companies have a regional planning process. So right now we're looking at the next 20 years of forecasted electricity requirement in our, what we call the Georgian Bay District. We're the southwestern corner, going all the way east to Beaverton, so northwest up to Meaford, and even more further up to past the Gravenhurst area. And so we're discussing about in this jurisdiction, what is the forecasted load, and we know what we predict over the next 20 years will be wrong. So we keep coming back to the table, because if you talk about 2020 or 2002, what we thought the load growth would be, it's not what came to fruition. And so it's something that we're constantly working with our sector participants in order to ensure that we're ready for what's coming our way.
Great. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Excuse me. First off, I'd like to congratulate you, Mr. Long, on your promotion to chairman. You have big shoes to fill, and I know your skill set, so I know you'll do very well. So congratulations to you, sir. To Ms. Long, I'm just curious. I promise not to ask you a debt question. I think I've got a grasp on that now. But what I'm always excited about is, and I know this is just so tunnel vision and you want to shoot me for it, but I just always get excited about what are you going to pay us? So what's the dividend each year? And when I look at it, I can't do the math on how you come up with the dividend. So even though the energy sales are up, it looks like our net income is relatively stable. I mean, a little bit of a drop, but our shareholder payout drops substantially and then follows back up. What is the math to get to the dollars for the dividend for shareholders?
So the math should be, and if it's not, then it should typically be the actual net income, 50% of the actual net income. So of the prior year, sorry. So yeah, we used to provide a dividend based on our budgeted net income. And then we moved a few years ago. We decided it was more accurate to be looking at our actual net income instead of, our budget. If it's incorrect, then we're either over providing or under providing, which is what we didn't want to go for. So we are now, after we have our actual net income from our audited financial statements, we then provide that value. 50% of that is provided to the shareholder in that following year. So if that is not.
Oh, so of the.
So for example, it should be.
Can we just do one then? So I would do the previous year. So for 2023, which is what I'm excited about, I want to get 478,000 from you. And you're telling me then it is the 957 at 50%, which should be 478.
Below. So the 478.
Because it's of the previous year. So 957,846 net income.
Yep.
At 50% equals 478,923 in 2023.
Right.
Okay.
So these are the annual dividends to shareholders are paid in the following year.
Got it.
Right.
You good, Deputy Mayor?
Yes. That is
I am. Thank you for explaining it. I guess it's just so unfortunate. So the projections that we have are pessimistic as we go forward, right? So we drop off quite a bit in 2.5 and 2.6.
We are pessimists as opposed to optimists. No. To be honest, I mean, we've looked at, this is our plan going forward is we try to make it as accurate as possible. We have seen an increase in our operating expenses starting in 2023 when we added a new staff member. So that really, we saw our operating expenses increase. And then as I had mentioned, through succession planning in the future, we will see that person, that staff potentially drop off. That's within the business plan. So that has negatively affected the net income going forward. So
Understood. So thank you very much.
Driver of
Yeah,
that.
thank you for explaining that to me. It just didn't, the P&L doesn't scream at you how you get to that, so.
Right,
thank you for
absolutely.
explaining it.
Yep. So that's what it is, following year.
Was there any additional questions from members of council? No, seeing none, there is a resolution in the business plan that, let me just read it here. Whereas the town of Orangeville, the shareholder is a shareholder of Orangeville Hydro Limited, the corporation, and whereas section 7.1 of the amended and restated unanimous shareholders agreement requires the business plan of the corporation be approved by the shareholders, and whereas the corporation business plan 2023 to 2027 was presented to the shareholder, and whereas the shareholder authorized the mayor and clerk to execute the resolution approving the corporation's business plan 2023 to 2027, therefore be it resolved that the corporation's business plan 2023 to 2027 be approved. The foregoing resolution is hereby passed by the shareholder pursuant to the section 104.1. Can I have a motion? Councillor Andrews, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Any further questions? No? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship.
11.2, we will ask Julianne von Westerholt, the associate from MHBC Planning, regarding 3 Zina Street zoning bylaw amendment application. I believe we have her here via Teams. Is that correct? We'll also invite Mr. Brown up to the delegation chair. There we go. Ms. von Westerholt, over to you.
Good evening, Mayor, Your Worship, and members of council and members of the public. I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have on behalf of the application, and I'm here to support the staff report that was prepared in advance of this meeting today. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, do you have any comments that you'd like to make before I move on to questions?
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Again, congratulations to council, and it's nice to be in front of friends and colleagues, former colleagues here. Again, I have reached out to council, and I want to thank our planning staff, Larissa Russell and Brandon Ward, for the work on this. We're taking an underutilized building in downtown Orangeville and trying to breathe some new life into it, create a multi-use facility, some new residential accommodation, and a meeting room, and also a potential new business and a cafe in this building. It's in an area of, really business and redevelopment on First Street, a block off of Broadway. And, I'm very happy with what MHBC, the planning consultant, has put together as far as the planning justification report and all the hard work that they did working with staff. Takes a long time to get these projects in front of council, and I'm glad to be here. I welcome any questions, and I know Julianne is also here to answer any questions that council might have. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to our former worship. Thank you for being here, sir. So I know the answer, but I just think it's important to ask the answer in public. And so my concern with this project from the get-go has been parking. I did speak with Mr. Ward, and I've spoke with yourself, but I'd love for you to explain to the public, the background is currently you do not meet the amount of parking spots for the area, but you have a solution, which I think is a good one, and I'm supportive of, but I'd love it if we could just talk about that in an open session, if we could, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Deputy Mayor, for the question. So the way these things evolve, I knew early on in the process, knowing, the zoning requirements for residential units requires parking. So we did put in the application targeting seniors, which, you know, with this building being located in the urban center of Orangeville, close to libraries and banks and shopping and a lot of amenities, that there is the possibility that seniors would not have the necessity to have a vehicle. So that was the first decision that we took. And then as the public meeting came into play in July, and we heard some further discussions from public and from council members, interesting, the BIA, our general manager of the BIA, Alison Shield, actually shared with me that there are some local property owners in the area, some of which have parking, and that I might want to reach out and see if there is any long-term parking arrangements that could be made. So I did get at that back in the summer, early fall, and reached out to the owner at 229 Broadway. And if you're familiar with that property, that's where Kyle Seaback's office is. The previous owner had also purchased 22 Zina Street. So the parking lot connects with Zina Street only about 200 feet from the front door of 3 Zina Street. So that particular property really made a lot of sense in terms of securing a long-term lease agreement. We do have a letter of intent with that owner, and if this does pass tonight, we'll be directing our lawyer to prepare a document and some back and forth with the owner of that property. I also reached out to the owner of the Lord Dufferin Center, Mr. Dave Hallwell. If you know that property, you know there's quite a bit of vacant land to the west of Lord Dufferin Center building. Lots of parking space there. Mr. Hallwell has also signed a letter of intent giving authority to negotiate and to finalize a long-term parking lease agreement there. So I think those two, there were 6 parking spaces in each. So 12 parking spaces exceeds what's required by this proposal and what the staff has recommended. So we think we've secured and solved that problem for the long term for the residents of the building. That's the background there.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Brown, for doing that. I know we appreciate you listening to our concerns from the public meeting. Was there any additional questions? And we will be asking again in 12.2, but go ahead, Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question. I just want to congratulate Mr. Brown. I will be supporting this. Mr. Brown took the initiative, get the parking. He's taken an old building that wasn't being used, turning it into something we can all be proud of. And I'd just like to congratulate him on taking the initiative. And I wish more developers would look at that type of thing and, you know, and look for answers. And I love the idea of the seniors apartments. I think that's great. And I think we should have more of them. Thank you.
So Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Brown. Again, I echo the comments made by my colleague here. I think the fact that you're bringing this historical building to life is very unique, and I am really appreciative of what you've put before us. The fact you're providing housing, you're also providing meeting places, and like I say, breathing life back to that historical building, and also adding to our taxation base, which is much appreciated.
Thank you. No further questions? Oh, Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Times 3 regarding the comments that have been made. Mr. Brown, I just have a question regarding the clientele that possibly would be utilizing the apartments. It has been mentioned seniors are the target, but would you restrict that or be specific to seniors, or would you be open to others who may be also looking for, quote, affordable accommodations?
Mr. Brown?
Well, I'm going to ask Julianne to answer that one. I'm not sure that we can. The zoning bylaw allows you to specifically, buttonhole it into seniors, but that is the target for me personally. I don't know about the zoning bylaw. Maybe Julianne, maybe you can speak to this.
Ms. Von Westerholt?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, I agree with the statements that my client made, that we're not intending to people zone or direct it just to one group. That is the intended target group. However, my client has assured me that he would be open to others that would approach him if that were to be the case. And we definitely don't want to just segregate it to one sector of the society. So I hope that answers your question.
If I could add something, tomorrow I'm actually having a meeting with Nora Kennedy at Family Transition Place. As some of you know, their plans to add on to their building have been delayed because of failure to secure significant grant from provincial and federal government. So they are interested in some of these apartments as well. So we'll see how that goes, but yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
But yeah, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Ms. Van Westerholt. We will see you back at 12.2 if there's any further questions. Next, we have 11.3, which is Andrea Sinclair, partner with MHBC Planning regarding 41 William Street and the part lot control exemption application. Over to you, Ms. Sinclair.
Good evening. Julianne and I should have coordinated and come in person, but given this time of year, it's nice to be able to still do these virtually, but it is nice to see everyone. This will be very brief. I typically wouldn't address council on something as straightforward as part lot control, but there's kind of a long history with these applications, and did just want to make sure I was available if there are any questions of council. I think, and I thank staff for their report. I think the planning report prepared by Mr. Ward does a really good job of setting out some of that history. And I just wanted to reiterate that all of the obligations under the minutes of settlement that were approved by OLT will be fulfilled or have already been fulfilled. And this is not trying to circumvent any of those things that we've already agreed to. This is sort of just in the next stage of implementation of the minutes of settlement that were approved. So again, just here to answer any technical questions that may come up, but I thank staff for their work in putting together a complete report that helps to outline the background, especially for any members of council that were not sitting on council when these applications went through the zone change process. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sinclair. Was there any questions from members of council that want to be answered now, or we'll wait till 12.3? Perfect. Thanks, Ms. Sinclair. We'll get back to you in 12.3 when we get there.
Thank you.
Next is 11.4. We have Mr. Bruce Walkinshaw, who's going to come up and delegate regarding the notice of motion that was given by Deputy Mayor Taylor regarding the election sign bylaw. Mr. Walkinshaw. Please just make sure to turn on the mic. It's not on right now.
Is that it?
There you go. You got it.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Walkinshaw.
Okay. My name is Bruce Walkinshaw, and I'm a resident of Orangeville. Your worship and councilors, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to Deputy Mayor Todd Taylor's motion to review the Orangeville sign bylaw with respect to election signs. I am here to respectfully request that no changes be made to restrict election signs. Restricting election signs is anti-democratic, amounts to voter suppression, intensifies incumbency advantage. Please bear in mind the noise of democracy is deafening. Democracy is messy. Dealing with election signs for a few weeks every 4 years helps ensure a healthy democratic system and provides a more level playing field for challengers. On December the 8th, Ontario's Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell called on Ontario's MPPs to uphold democratic values in the Ontario legislature and warned of the fragility of democracy. Dowdeswell said, "I feel a heavy weight to protect and nurture something we all hold so precious, and that's our democracy." Restricting election signs is anti-democratic. Every effort should be made to encourage people to vote. Despite a large field of candidates in 2018 and 2022, the vote in Orangeville dropped from 38% to 27%. In my Riddell Montgomery neighborhood, we receive literature from only 5 candidates, and not one candidate knocked on our door. At least a large volume of signs communicated who most of the candidates were, providing voters a starting point to research their voting options. Election signs are one of, if not the most effective way to create and increase candidate name recognition. This is even more critical for local races that don't generate a lot of attention. Without signs that people can see on a day-to-day basis, name recognition is really at stake. How would we know who the candidates are? Election signs popping up in our communities really give the sense that an election is underway, that things are happening, and of course, showing us who is running for office. It increases the interest of voters. We need to encourage voter interest, not dampen it. The voters will decide if excessive signage from any candidate impacts their decision about who they will vote for. This isn't about beauty, it's about democracy. Campaign signs serve another important purpose, to help motivate staff and volunteers. Seeking out public locations to place signs and canvassing our voters for sign locations is a significant part of the campaign. People see these signs as part and parcel of what a campaign needs to be doing. Without them, things feel a little naked. Let me address the incumbency advantage. Unlike many municipalities in 2022, Orangeville had an abundance of election candidates, 16 to be exact, which accounts for the large number of signs on boulevards. There were no acclamations, and all the incumbents were either re-elected or elected to new council positions. 2 new councillors were elected. Any action that restricts the ability of new candidates to be elected moves you away from democracy and towards authoritarianism. It's a big word. My understanding is that this election sign review is due in large part to the excessive number of signs placed along town streets by 2 of the 16 recent candidates. I would implore this council to avoid making any decisions to restrict signage based on a knee-jerk reaction to this behavior. Election signage is for the benefit of the voting public and for the candidates who have the democratic right to be seen and heard during an election campaign. Finally, to quote Winston Churchill, House of Commons, 31 October 1944, at the bottom of all the tributes paid to democracy is the little man, walking into the little booth with a little pencil, making a little cross on a little bit of paper. No amount of rhetoric or voluminous discussion can possibly diminish the overwhelming importance of that point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walkinshaw. Was there any questions from members of council? Mr. Walkinshaw? Nope. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You just need to shut off the mic there. If somebody could, that would be great. Thank you. We'll move on to staff reports. Item 12.1, Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Director appointment. That report CAO 2022-11 Ontario Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Director appointment be received, and that Sandy Brown be removed from the Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors at the next special board meeting to appoint and remove directors to be scheduled on or before January 31st, 2022, and that council nominate Lisa Post to serve on the Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors for a 3-year term until January 2026 or until their successors are appointed, and that council nominate to extend the term of Andy McIntosh to serve on the Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors for an additional 3-year term until January 2026 or until their successors are appointed, and that council appoint Lisa Post as proxy with power of substitution to attend and to vote for the corporation of the town of Orangeville at Orangeville Hydro Limited Board of Directors meeting and at any adjournments thereof, revoking any proxy previously given, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute this proxy form, and that council directs such proxy to vote in favor of the nominees approved by council. Can I have a motion for that, please? Councillor Stevens and Deputy Mayor Taylor, was there any questions or comments? Yeah, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. Am I reading this correctly? In the recommendation, it's saying to be scheduled on before January 31st. Should that be 2023?
Yes, it should be. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't even catch that one.
Yeah, we're coming up to a new year.
That's right, we sure are. Was there any additional questions? No, all in favor? And carried unanimously, thank you. We'll move on to item 12.2, which is 3 Zina Street. The recommendation is that the report INS-2022-61 regarding 3 Zina Street recommendation report RZ 2022-02 be received, and that zoning bylaw amendment application RZ 2022-02 be approved, and that council pass a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 22-90 as amended to rezone lots 1, block 5, registered plan 212, town of Orangeville, county of Dufferin, municipally known as 3 Zina Street, from institutional zone to restricted commercial residential C5 zone, special provision 24.334 to permit a mixed-use building, included as attachment number 4 to this report, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the encroachment agreement included as attachment number 3 to this report. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McIntosh and seconded by Councillor Andrews. Was there any additional questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.3, 41 William Street, part lot control exemption, file PLC 2022-01. Recommendation that report INS-2022-62 41 William Street, part lot control exemption, file PLC 2022-01 be received, and that part lot control exemption application file number PLC-2022-01 be approved, and that council pass a bylaw included as attachment number 1 to this report to exempt the subject lands from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act in order to allow the creation of 2 semi-detached dwelling lots. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Stevens. Was there questions? Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any questions. We've been over this property thousands of times, it feels like. So I understand what's happening. I just kind of want to make a statement, and the statement is to the people that live on William Street. I don't believe that this property is the right thing to put here. I'm not in favor of this property. I've voted no every time this property has come up. Unfortunately, we're now at the point where we're out of runway. There's no sense in voting no to something that is going to pass. So I wanted to share with those people that unfortunately, we fought the good fight here, and we're going to lose if I vote against putting this in. So I'm going to vote yes, but it saddens me that we're at this point with this property.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Was there any additional questions or comments? Nope, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Item 12.4 is regarding the advisory committee and board appointments. I do have a separate motion that's outside of the agenda that I will read. It's a bit of a long one, so bear with me. That report CPS-2022-69 advisory committee and board appointments be received, and that council appoint members of council to each of the boards and committees listed below. To the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, Councillor Prendergast. To the Orangeville Business Improvement Area Board of Management, Deputy Mayor Taylor. To the Orangeville Police Services Board, Mayor Post and Deputy Mayor Taylor. To the Orangeville Public Library Board, Councillors Prendergast and Stevens. To the Theatre Orangeville Board of Directors, Councillor Sherwood. And that council appoint Councillor Stevens, as well as 1 member of staff to be determined, to the Dufferin Provincial Offences Administration Board of Management. And that council appoint Councillor Andrews to continue to serve on the 236 First Street Committee, and that council appoint Councillor McIntosh to serve as a county council alternate for Mayor Post, and Councillor Sherwood to serve as a county council alternate for Deputy Mayor Taylor, and that council approve the creation of the following advisory committees of council and appoint the members of council listed to each committee below. Access Orangeville Committee, Councillor Stevens. The Committee of Adjustment, Property Standards, Dog Designation will have no member of council, will be comprised of public members. The Economic Development and Culture Committee, Councillor Andrews. The Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Councillor Andrews. The Fire Services Advisory Committee, Councillor Stevens. The Heritage Orangeville Committee, Councillor Sherwood. The Homelessness Task Force, Councillor Andrews and Councillor Sherwood. The Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, Mayor Post. The Official Plan Steering Committee, Mayor Post and Deputy Mayor Taylor. The Seniors Advisory Committee, Councillor McIntosh. Sustainable Orangeville Committee, Councillor Prendergast. And that council directs staff to draft terms of reference for each established committee and report back to council for approval. And that council directs staff to advertise and recruit committee members and report back to council to facilitate committee appointments. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, was there any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just one question, and through you to the clerk, if I could, just to make sure I understand. So first off, to you, Your Worship, thank you very much for this. I appreciate your leadership on this. I don't have any concerns with your plan. I think it's a great one. My question to the clerk is regarding the Committee of Adjustment and whatnot. I do think it's right that we go out to the public. But as we sit here now, there's a member of council, me, sitting on that committee. When does that end? Does it end when we get a member, or am I just officially off now, or how does that go? Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I'll turn it over to you.
Through Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor, you're correct in that you will have to hang tight a little bit longer until we appoint the new members, and then we get that committee fully going. Committee of Adjustment is one that must meet when we are in receipt of applications within a certain time frame. So that one needs to go on with the current complement up until we can appoint a new roster of members.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, to you, Your Worship. Two things. So in your motion, you mentioned about appointing Councillor Stevens to the Dufferin Provincial Offences Administration Board along with a staff member. Are we deciding who the staff member is, or are we asking staff to appoint staff?
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. I have asked Madam Clerk to designate the most appropriate from the administrative team to sit on that board. If council would like to have input, we can definitely suggest it, but just based on the workload required, I thought it was best to leave that to the clerk to decide. The clerk and administration team. Did you have a?
So that staff member will be put in the list when the list of the council appointments and all their names are in there. That staff member's name will be listed, and then I do
Madam Clerk, go ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, through you. So we will, for the January 9th meeting, we will be bringing back the terms of reference for each of the committees that are being struck tonight. That will give us just a little bit of buffer time for us to internally, between staff, determine who the most appropriate staff members may be for that staff representative, and we can certainly include it in that report just for the clarity of council and for confirmation, so to speak, if that works.
Okay, Your Worship, just to follow up on what Deputy Mayor was alluding to about sitting on committees that haven't started up again. I'm also wondering, under the Police Services Board, we have a member that we appointed, our previous council appointed. Is that person still sitting on until the new one is appointed? Because I thought that that was supposed to end at our term of council, which would have been when our council term ended November 14th. I always thought under all of our terms of references that those appointments also then expired.
I can speak to that a little bit, and then I'll maybe call on some assistance if I need it. But there are a couple of boards, the library board being one, and I believe the police service board being another, that will continue until the new ones are, the new people are put onto those boards. So the library board, for example, which I sit on right now, will continue to stay intact until the new appointments come. And the police services board would be the same. So there are a couple of them that will go on like that. Committee of Adjustment will be another, just because those are mandated ones that we need to have as well.
So again, just not to monopolize all the time here, that is addressed in the terms of reference, that those people don't end at council term, at the end of the reappointment term?
Madam Clerk.
Your Worship, that is correct. So just to provide a little bit of clarity, some of the boards that continue on up until such time they're replaced by the new members, that's more around business continuity lens, if I could put it that way, because they have more of an administrative lead role to play, whereas for advisory committees, Councillor Sherwood, you're absolutely right, for advisory committees, their term ends exactly with the term of council. But where there are committees that are mandated or have more of a management angle to them, then they need to continue on just for the purpose of business continuity, as Mayor Post explained. And yes, as part of tonight's report, it gets the conversation started in terms of getting council to establish what you want to see in the new term. But when you have your new roster prepared, then we will repeal whoever was in place and then put in the new. So today doesn't take away that ability of those certain boards to continue operating.
Is that good, Councillor Sherwood? Was there any additional questions or comments? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to speak to the police for a minute if I could. So we did, even though there was an election and we were newly elected as this board, we've had meetings since this new term of council. And I don't want to put words in my esteemed colleague's mouth here, but I think you knew that you weren't going to be on the board anymore, yet you continued to come to the meetings because we hadn't officially appointed a new member. Now we've appointed a new member, so I assume we've seen the end of your regime at this time. However, the other people, there's 2 provincial appointees, and they've both been extended by the Solicitor General. And then that just leaves 1 member, and that's the member that we all, well, 5 of 7 of us appointed 4 years ago. And that'll be up to that member to decide if he is going to reapply, and then we'll decide. But he has to serve with us until we do that action, because we need to continue to act, right? So, yeah.
Perfect. Any additional questions or comments? No? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And carried unanimously. Thank you. 12.5 is an updated land acknowledgement, and the recommendation is that report CPS-2022-71 updated land acknowledgement be received, and that council adopt the following updated land acknowledgement for the town of Orangeville, which will read: we like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today, and that the updated land acknowledgement be used to open council meetings and at town facilities and at formal events as appropriate. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews and Deputy Mayor Taylor, any questions or comments? Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, is this land acknowledgement being used by all municipalities within Dufferin County, including county council, or is this just specific to Orangeville?
This one would just be specific to Orangeville.
Okay,
the Dufferin County sits on different territories than we do, so there are other treaties that are acknowledged at different parts of the county. So the Dufferin County land acknowledgement includes Melanchthon and Mulmer, and they sit on a treaty out of Nottawasaga, and there's some additional treaty lands there, but this is just within the borders of the town of Orangeville.
just that our land acknowledgement is making reference to Dufferin County. Would that not be more specific to Orangeville? Just say town of Orangeville?
This was what was provided by the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation to the DCCRC.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
No problem. Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to make a comment, I know that the organization you've referenced, which is the DCCRC, this is version number 2. And as land acknowledgements have become the norm within municipalities and other levels of government, it was important to get it right. And I think that you've alluded to the fact that there are some nuances, but with the consultation that has been provided by other elders and other organizations, I think the accuracy is such that it is reflective also of our community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Was there any additional questions or comments? No. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And carried unanimously. Item 12.6 is the new business information report, July 1st to December 1st, 2022, CMS-2022-30. The recommendation is that it be received. Can I have a mover? Councillor Andrews and Deputy Mayor Taylor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. As I've done so in previous acknowledgements of this particular document, I want to applaud the businesses who have invested in our community, especially as we're continuing through the recovery of the pandemic, for them to do so during a period that has much uncertainty, inflationary concerns. I really am enthused by the numbers and also on the number of at-home business operators as well. We had a declaration of 8 that have secured their business licenses. So thank you for investing in our community.
Any additional comments or questions? Nope, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor? And carried. Item 13, correspondence. Their recommendation is that the following correspondence, 13.1, the proclamation request of Salvation Army Week, the correspondence from Sabrina Knapp regarding the animal bylaw, and the newest one, the Town of Mono Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, that those items of correspondence be received, and that December 18th to 24th, 2022 be proclaimed as Salvation Army Week. Can I have a motion, please? Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councillor McIntosh. Any questions or comments regarding any of the 3 items? No? Councillor Prendergast, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Item 13.2 regarding the animal bylaw. I took a look at it and I would recommend taking a second look at allowing pythons, ball pythons specifically, as was requested in the letter. Other municipalities, including Toronto and Waterloo and various other places in Southern Ontario, permit snakes that are less than 3 meters long and non-venomous, and that's something that Orangeville doesn't. So it might be worth directing the clerk to take a second look at our municipal animal control bylaw in regards to non-venomous snakes.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. I'll turn it over to Madam Clerk because I know that the animal bylaw is actually up for discussion coming soon.
Through you to Councillor Prendergast. That's absolutely correct. We have it on our regulatory bylaw review work plan for 2023. So we are going to be taking a look at that bylaw and doing a review of whether or not it still meets the needs of the community. So this letter, for example, will be one that we will print and put in our file for such time as we're ready to review that bylaw and then come back with some recommendations in that regard.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions? Nope. All in favor? And carried. There are no committee or board minutes. We will now move on to discussing 2 notice of motion that we had prior to meeting. I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Taylor for item 15.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just as I got here, my eScribe shut down on me, so do you want me to read the motion, Your Worship?
Yes, please. Oh, now I've just lost it out here.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
You do preamble and all.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the idea behind this bylaw is I want my purpose was, I just want to give my preamble and then I'll read the motion. But my preamble is I wanted this group to simply debate this. And so what I would say is what I have down on this piece of paper as suggestions, I'm not married to any of them. I just simply think that this group needs to have a discussion about it and we need to do it in the public. And I do think that the presentation by Mr. Walkinshaw was interesting. I wrote down the comments. Democracy is messy. He's right. Deafening sounds of democracy kind of eking out. He's right. The fragility of democracy. All these things resonate with me. And it also resonates with me that in 2018, I was new. Nobody knew who I was. Signs helped. They for sure did. It's just the issue is they proliferated. And in this last election, you know, I'm not here to pass judgment on anyone, but honestly, I was offended by the sheer amount. And when you see, and I've got in this thing that there was 10 signs in a row, I didn't count them, I don't know, but there sure was a large amount of signs for one candidate in a row. And honestly, you know, as publicly as I can and trying to be as nice as I can, I thought that was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. It's not what's intended of getting your name out there. It's creating pollution in my mind. And again, I just want to hear what the 6 of you have to say as we go through this. So my motion is, whereas the recent election cycle within Orangeville witnessed a plethora of signs for candidates, whereas the sheer number of signs on public property served to diminish the beautification of the town, and whereas the boulevards in Orangeville on public property were substantially covered with a large amount of signs, and whereas much of Orangeville public property was covered by duplicate signs of individual candidates in the same geographic area, and where the public property duplicate signs frequently witnessed up to 10 signs in a row. Therefore, be it resolved, the council instruct town staff to consider/research a limit on the number of signs that one candidate can place on public property within town limits. And be it resolved, the council instruct town staff to consider/research how close signs from an individual candidate can be to each other on public property. Lastly, once the clerk's research recommendation is complete, the council consider debate the recommendation and make changes for implementation to the 2026 election cycle. And one last comment, if I could, our neighbors to the south just recently made a large vote about no election signs. I'm not in favor of that. I'm not suggesting that, but there is a lot of this discussion going on amongst other towns as well. So it won't be just ours. Anyway, I turn it over to my colleagues and would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Before I turn over for questions, I know Councillor McIntosh is eagerly waiting. Would you also be willing to second it first? Okay, perfect. Now I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think there's got to be a happy medium here. I agree with Councillor Taylor. I may have backed off my previous questioning of no signs. I agree with Mr. Wilkinshaw. It is getting the public name out there, but to put two signs side by side, I think that's the same as just complete pollution and a waste of time and space. I look at the amount of signs that were used by a few candidates this time, and I can't imagine if that money was spent at the Orangeville Food Bank instead of wasting of signs. It just seemed such a waste, and frankly, it was embarrassing. Like I was down in Kitchener-Waterloo area, and you wouldn't know there was an election on. There was the odd sign on people's lawn and stuff like that. I just think Orangeville, it went overboard, and I just hope when we do make this new bylaw, there's not ways for people to cheat the system, so to speak, because they will. They'll find a way around it. So it'll be interesting when it does come up, but I do support it. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and Deputy Mayor Taylor. Thank you for bringing this motion forward. I know that many of us, not to use the term, were embarrassed, but in dialogue that I had throughout the campaign trail, many people ended up bringing to my attention personally was the infamous wall of signs. It changed our community overnight, and we understand, and I absolutely applaud Mr. Walkinshaw for his inspiration regarding democracy. I get it, I understand it, but there also has to be some kind of method to limit, and again, Councillor McIntosh, you've also indicated something that can potentially happen. If there is a little opening, somebody will find it and will utilize it. This will be the task, I guess, of staff to try and find out if there is a best practice in place, be that through bylaw. And again, I have to compliment bylaw as well and through the clerk's department. If there were signs that were located in places that weren't supposed to be, the candidates knew about it. And there were penalties applied if they didn't, come by and get their signs within a period of time. Maybe that's part of the process, is to increase the penalties. If there are infractions somehow embedded into whatever the discussion ends up being, a new bylaw or a revision to a bylaw, that the penalties are higher. So this way the candidates will take a look at this a little more strategically, a little more seriously, as opposed to just putting up a wall of signs and be careless in where they do so. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of points of interest. During the election, I definitely felt voter fatigue myself, even though I was running. And I think it had to do with our municipal length of time that we allow people to erect signs. During the provincial and federal election, the writ period is 25 to 30 days. We allow signs for 45 days for a municipal election. It felt like double the amount of time. So I think if we took a look at limiting the duration of time we allow signs, it might appease the general public a bit more, because we won't feel over inundated with signs constantly for 2 months. I do agree with Mr. Walkinshaw that the incumbents do have an advantage, definitely, because they have name recognition. Often when you throw your hat into the political ring, you may have also accrued that name recognition in other domains. I look to the south of us in Caledon. They have a sign bylaw where you're not allowed to put signs on public property, but you are on private. So approaching private residents is an option. And then you kind of earn those sign placements. They also require a $300 deposit for signs, which speaks to what Mr. Andrews, Councillor Andrews was speaking to, that maybe if there is a financial implication to disobeying the sign bylaw, one would be more responsible in that regard. And I'd just like to point out that signs are often misaligned as being environmentally irresponsible. They are number 5 plastic, and in Dufferin County, they are recyclable. So all of us up here probably know we can recycle our used election signs. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. Was there additional questions? Councillor Stevens?
For you, Your Worship. I agree with everybody. We have to do something to help our residents not, see my big face around town. But I mean, I just don't want to overburden staff either by making them go out and count, 200 signs. We have to come up with a way, something that we can do to make sure it's very simple for everybody. So that's all.
Councillor Sherwood and then Deputy Mayor Taylor.
I believe Deputy Mayor had his hand up before me. Go ahead.
I usually say don't worry about it, but I'll take it. I just wanted to make 2 points. And by the way, this is exactly what I wanted. So thank you, everybody. I wanted to debate this. I'd like to talk to some comments that were made over here. And it's this public versus private. And if you remove all of the public, you're giving all of us an advantage, which I'm not in favor of doing that, right? So more residents will know who this group is versus, in the other election, you were new. So maybe people didn't know you as well. And that would mean that Councillor Andrews had an advantage over you. And I don't think that's right. So just to eliminate it and have it just on residents' lawn, I'm not sure that's a great solution. And then the other thing I'd like to call to, and I think about our former councillor friend, Mr. Peters, and he beat the drum 4 years ago about Collingwood, and Collingwood had stickers and the number of signs that you could have. And I thought that was interesting. We all faded away from it for exactly what Councillor Stevens is saying. It sounded like a logistical nightmare to all of us. But there's something there too, right, that should be discussed and talked about and thought through. So I don't have the answer. I just want to bring as many things on the table for us to consider as possible.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having sat on the previous council, I thought we did a really good job of the election sign bylaw, only because I think back when I ran in 2014 and 2018, I could put signs everywhere and anywhere. And I think the fact that we made it in certain areas made it better, but maybe that's what had the perception of it being more polluted, because then we were limited to the number of streets that we're putting on. I particularly didn't like to have to use signs for many reasons, but I know that that's what I needed to do. As far as limiting the number that are in a row, I think that onus falls back on the running candidate to be respectful. And I don't think that we should have to put a law against that. I think the person should be respectful enough to know that. And you know what, I like the whole approach about this, but like I said, I think I was very proud in what we did for our election signs. I too feel that election signs should be allowed because as an incumbent, yes, I have an advantage. And I think people want to see who's running and maybe their face or not their face, but just have that name. But again, I think it's a respect for the candidates that are running. They need to educate themselves and be more respectful.
Was there any additional questions or comments? I'll just give my 2 cents then. The municipalities that surround us for the most part have much stricter sign bylaws than we do. And I know that that's to a detriment to new candidates. So I agree with what Councillor Taylor's done here. I think that we've done a good job of getting the sign bylaw fixed, but I think we do have an opportunity to investigate what best practices are happening in other municipalities and revisit it ahead of the next election. So I think this notice of motion is a good one because it gives the clerk's team some time to do some research on what's going on in other municipalities and what changes are happening as a result of this election. So I'm happy to support your motion and see what recommendations staff comes back with before the 2026 election. I will go ahead and call the vote if there's no further questions or comments. All in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, item 15.2, Deputy Mayor Taylor, I will turn it back over to you. I did turn this on properly, so you can read it there if you want.
I have a printed copy now. Thank you. So the purpose behind this is, and again, this was prior to the election issue. I did bring it to this, well, to the previous council prior to the election. During door knocking and feedback, I think a lot of us heard that noise is an issue in our town. And it's not that noise isn't going to happen in a town. It's disrespectful noise is what we're after. And specifically what I'm talking about is modified mufflers and the noise that these cars make as they go forward. So what I would like us to consider is having our bylaw updated. The police, as chair of the Police Services Board, the police have been enforcing the fact that modified mufflers are illegal. Councillor McIntosh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but 25 tickets recently in a blitz. But they would need to choose certain times to blitz. So what I would like to do is have our bylaw do the same and, have these things looked after on a regular basis. So again, to my fellow councillors, I'll read the bylaw or the most motion I have here, but I'm not married to the way I have it written. What I want again is the 6 of you to weigh in and offer your thoughts on what should be done. But I'm telling you, this is an issue. And since we all just knocked on doors, I think you're aligned with me that this is an issue. So whereas the town's noise bylaw was passed in 1996, and since that time, the town has evolved due to technology of present times, and whereas the town's noise bylaw needs to be updated to include issues currently incurred within the town, whereas the town's population has grown, the existence of loud noise that disturbs others has increased, and whereas any behavior created by an individual such as yelling, screaming, shouting, or swearing is likely to disturb others with reasonable enjoyment of someone else within a public space, and whereas the technology improvements of music playing devices has greatly improved, creating louder music which may disturb others, and whereas the technology improvements of sports cars has created the ability to modify car engines, especially mufflers, which can create vehicles that purposely backfire, super annoying, and have any loud muffler systems. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to bring forward a bylaw to amend the town's noise bylaw to include separate and distinct clause to create an offense for noise created by motor vehicles to be enforced by the OPP. And just the last thing, Madam Mayor, if I could, the town bylaw right now, if you read it, it speaks like a document from 1888. Like it speaks to hooting and silliness. Like this thing is dated beyond dated. So I would implore my friends to debate this bill and make a change. Thank you.
Before I turn over to you, Councillor Andrews, will you also second it? Perfect. Thank you. Now over to you for question.
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Worship, to speak to this. You're going to hear a very quick story. I'm a car guy, big time. I've had 28 vehicles in my life. In a number of cases, a number of sports cars. Rebuilt them, enamored them, and sold them. I understand where some of the young people have predominantly are the ones that are affecting and percolating this notice of motion. The thought of having a vehicle that sounds as loud as it can be, or the decibel is probably similar to a 747, becomes problematic. As with anyone that has a fancy car, you baby it, you spend money on it, and you want to, of course, sometimes brag about it. But this is taking bragging to a different level, and it becomes an annoyance and problematic. And I think that I understand what many youth are trying to do, but this becomes something that is an annoyance for many people in our community, in many communities, many municipalities. The only piece that I have a concern about is the ability of our bylaw department to parallel some of the enforcement that, in fact, the police services would be able to do. So if, for example, a bylaw officer on Broadway, somewhere in town, sees and no doubt hears one of these modified vehicles, are they going to be able to have the same impact or ability to stop someone versus a police officer who can put their lights on, automatically end up imposing an infraction, a ticket, such as you've indicated, a blitz? What I'm hoping it doesn't do is put our bylaw department in jeopardy, That's what I'm more concerned about, because I've spoken to many young people in my specific neighborhood. And again, I'm just in awe. I salivate when I see the vehicle and the amount of money that they've spent on these toys. And of course, well, Mr. Andrews, I also have spent so much on this exhaust system so that everybody can hear me. I said, well, do you realize that you're waking us up at 4:30 in the morning when you start your vehicle? And, of course, they end up taking a different perspective out of respect, and they realize that the neighborhood is, in fact, being awoken at that time. So I think for us to properly navigate through this, we have to have the support, no doubt we have, of our local police detachment. And they have some best practices in place that can help. But I just don't want to jeopardize the safety of our bylaw department, because if, the bylaw department gets into a situation, and I'm just not making this up, this could happen, where the individual just disregards the bylaw officer and just decides to take off. They don't normally do that with a police officer because they know what the implications would be. So just my thoughts on this. And again, I'm hoping that we can have further dialogue amongst all of us here tonight on this.
Deputy Mayor Taylor, do you want to comment on that at all? Or
Just really quickly, I think everything you say makes absolute sense. The piece of it is the bylaw officers aren't in danger because of this bylaw. Our bylaw officers are in danger frequently, right? So they're put into awkward situations all the time. It's a very difficult job. It's stressful and taxing. And whatever we put in front of them, they're going to have conflict. That's their job, right? So I'm not sure it's that way today. And if we add this bill to it, it's still that way today, right? So I'm not sure what that does for us, other than, I would agree, but yeah.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Your Worship. Currently, as it stands today, the OPP is able to enforce muffler noise through the Highway Traffic Act, and it's my understanding that Deputy Mayor Taylor is wanting to reinforce the issue, right? Like reinforce the message that it's not okay to be producing this level of noise coming from motor vehicles. Absolutely, it can be an issue. To Councillor Andrews, with respect to the concerns around bylaw officers, in fact, would not be able to stop vehicles that are in action in the process of doing this, and would largely be relying on the OPP to do this enforcement. It would be something that would be led primarily by the OPP.
Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Madam Mayor, to you, to our clerk, this town noise bylaw, is it on the work plan is it currently on the work plan, and what year?
Madam Clerk?
Your Worship, great question. I did mean to mention that, so my apologies, Councillor Sherwood. It is on the work plan for 2024, so it's not that far off, and that's to look at the whole bylaw, to review the whole bylaw as a whole. But if it is council's desire to have just this one clause added, that's something that we may be able to accommodate in 23. But if it's purely this targeted addition, but the review of the entire bylaw is currently slated for 24.
Yes, Your Worship.
Yep,
so basically, the motion is asking for all types of noise, not just mufflers. We seem to be talking exclusively on mufflers, which I'm satisfied is already being looked after, enforced through the police. I do worry, like my fellow Councillor Andrews, about our bylaw officers, interacting with people like that. You've clarified, Madam Clerk, that, they can't stop them individuals. So I'm wondering if we just leave it for when this comes back in 2024 for further discussion, because it is being enforced by the police, correct?
And Councillor Sherwood, one additional option that we could have is to move another one out of 23 into 24 and flip them. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. And actually, I know that this came up when the motion was originally introduced at the previous council meeting in terms of looking at the work plan again, and if it's council's desire for the clerk's division to bring back that report with the list, just so that you can do an accounting of what you want in 23 and then the years beyond. That can certainly be something that we can look at, and we can flag anything that we've already begun and anything that's kind of more imminent than not. But that can be something that council decides the timing on at such time as that report comes through, if that's the preference of council. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, and then I think Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Your Worship, I would rather see it sooner rather than later. The motorcycle noise out at my end of town is just awful. And that's about all I can say. And it's truly, it's nothing against motorcycles. I had one up until 2 years ago. It's just the, the muffler systems. So.
Yeah, there is definitely, I mean, just coming out of an election campaign, there was definitely a desire at Doors to have this revisited sooner rather than later. So my recommendation, I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor, would be that perhaps we look at moving the noise bylaw up to 23 and finding another bylaw that we can put into 24. But I'm assuming that the clerk would need to come back with some recommendations of what that would look like. So I'm not sure how we proceed with this motion at this time, but I'll maybe turn over to Madam Clerk with that.
Through Your Worship, I would recommend that perhaps maybe we reword the motion such that it gets it on the radar but doesn't establish a particular timeline, and it can be with respect to looking at the noise bylaw overall. And then I will put it on my radar to bring back a report to you in January, end of January, with respect to the regulatory bylaw review work plan, and then to make any updates that would capture some of these discussions, including the election sign bylaw as well, and try to slate that in because that's not currently in either. And then council can make a decision as to the timing.
Deputy Mayor Taylor, do you have ideas on how to maneuver your wording?
I don't know if I do have that, but I do just want to offer a clarifying statement. The issue that I heard was modified mufflers. I just want to share that I'm not necessarily married to how we do it. I just would say that this bylaw, although it's 1992 or something like that, it really is 1885. Like Marty McFly was around when they did this. Like, it's that bad. So that's where I'm coming from. I really want it to be updated, and I am trying to be as non-rigid as possible with all of my teammates up here about how that's done. I just really feel like we need to move this up. I would like to see it. I thank you, Mayor Post. I would like to see it moved up to 2023, and maybe that's simply what the motion is that we ask the clerk to consider moving this motion or this bylaw report, up a year, 18 months, what have you, and come back with a timeline suggestion for council and choices to be made in January of 2023.
Madam Clerk, is that captured enough?
The intent is captured, yes. Thank you.
Perfect. And I believe the seconder was Councillor Andrews on that. Are you good with that change as well? Perfect. Was there any other further questions or comments from members of council? No? I'll call a vote then. All in favor? And any opposed? None? Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Was there any notices of motion at today's meeting? Seeing none. Any items of new business? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. Looking at our council schedule, I know that if I'm correct in saying so, this is our last council meeting before the Christmas break. And since we happen to have representation from our Community Services Department in principle here, it is that time of the year where we get people coming together. And is there any status on our outdoor ice rinks? Will there be an update on the town page through Parks and Recreation?
Mr. Osmond?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Andrews, good call. It's time to get on the ice. But as soon as temperatures allow us to do that, yes, we'll be activating our rinks. Normally we look at a minus 10 degrees to trigger the rinks over a period of time, consistent number of days. And what will happen is we will trigger that through our communications division and announce when that will happen. Generally, sometimes we start right over Christmas, depending on the weather. And we could be in early January before we do some of the rinks, but we do trigger rinks, as you know, 4, 5, 6 rinks, depending on temperatures and location. But it would be our intent absolutely to announce that as soon as possible in the new year. And hopefully weather supports us doing it. And the minus 10 is very important to bring the temperatures down. And then staff would activate those rinks.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond. That's all I have.
Okay, was there any additional questions or items for new business? Oh, yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I had to get my phone out here and make sure I wasn't going to screw this up. So Christmas in the Park is still happening, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was going to go because there's entertainment each night. So tomorrow you can see the Ukuleles. I'm not making that up. It's a cool name. And then on Thursday you can see the Traveling Wannabes. And Monday the 19th, one of my faves is the Campfire Poets. So you want to go and see them. All this is free. And then the 22nd and 29th, the Orange Peel Carolers. There's also Girl Guides making hot chocolate, and there's baked goods and coffee in the park as well. So please go back. Go. You don't have to go just once. Go twice. Go 3 times. See the concerts. Have some fun. Bring your families. It's KC Gardens. Oh, I got in trouble from somebody for not telling people where that was. It's on Bethia Street. KC Gardens on Bethia Street. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you. I am going to ask you a question, Mr. Osmond, that I get asked almost every day. Is there an update on Alder Pool?
Mr. Osmond on the hot seat. Over to you.
Your Worship, thank you very much. Through to Council Prendergast. It's a good question. We're putting together a public announcement now on Alder Pool. Without going into all the detail and the logistics involved with Alder Pool, it's been quite detailed. I wouldn't want to call it frustrating, but it has been partly frustrating. Certainly not so much probably for me because I see it happening every day and how it evolves. But certainly for the public, it's a very frustrating experience. We asked them to continue to have some patience with us. It has been a long road, an exhausting road, dealing with supply chains. Sometimes people say, well, supply chains, but the fact of the matter is real. I mean, real issues. The global world is really hitting Orangeville in a big way when it comes to these pools. These pools are very complex. They're not like putting in concrete tomorrow. This is a stainless steel system. It's a state-of-the-art system. There's only a few in the province. They're coming on big time. Because of this pool, even though ours not finished yet, this pool has triggered about 4 more stainless steel pools in Ontario. We get a lot of visitors looking at how we do this. Not in your time, but certainly in the incumbent councillor's time. We ran into a lot of problems around that building. The pool itself has not always been the problem. We've had structural issues in that pool area. So the pavilion side, if you would, of the pool area, we had to do a lot of work. Anytime you have to stop a project and trigger something else, we have to go into a different tender and different process and different approvals and those sorts of things, structural engineers. So it's been a bit of a perfect storm to a certain degree, I guess, using that terminology from time to time as we deal with it. Right now, we met with staff last week. We're doing a public announcement onto it, but we met with staff last week. And what we're looking at is a date to activate a soft opening. And we're backing up from that because with any new system comes a complete mechanical training. So all of our staff, the staff and the operations side had to be trained to operate the system. It's a little bit more complex, but once it starts, it's great, but people got to be trained. And the aquatic staff as well got to be used to a different environment. And so what we're looking at doing is not a date everybody wants to hear, but it will be going into latter part of March, early April for a soft start. And then we will trigger our programs for the spring and then into the summer. All the stainless steel is on site. The welding of the steel on site can go anywhere from 6 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on people working. I will tell you that they are working right through Christmas. The contractor's not the contractor's issue here. It's the issue of getting the materials, and you know, it's been impacted by the Ukraine war and a whole bunch of other things. So it's a timing that it's not one we want to announce to say, well, we're waiting for another few weeks, but it is what it is. It's very difficult. It's been a very difficult project. But, you know, I'll stand by the fact that when it does get completed, it'll be something that you'll be very proud of in Orangeville. And quite right now, we've had several communities. Caledon to our immediate comes to mind right now. Caledon is looking at doing the same, stainless steel. Oakville's putting in another stainless steel, and so on. So all these places are triggering more pools based on that concept. You should know it's from your perspective, Councillor Prendergast, you'll enjoy this. It's a net zero pool in terms of the equipment. It's carbon neutral, so that's really good to see. So lots of things we're looking at launching in the future, but we will be doing a complete overview for the public, and our community or our communications crew are actually working on it as we speak, and we're just tying up a few loose ends in terms of the programming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Osmond. You answered all of my questions, and thank you for your hard work and diligence on seeing this project through.
Councillor Sherwood. Thank you, Mr. Osmond.
Yes, Your Worship. We have a very excellent community that likes to support fundraising events. Besides our beautiful Theatre Orangeville, I just wanted to do a shout out on an event that's happening this Thursday to support the Dufferins Men's Shelter. And I think it's a very important cause that if our community could support. There's going to be an invite to buy tickets for the Christmas Carol, which will be happening this Thursday at 3 Zion Street, the Covenant Alliance Church. I think this is incredibly important. If you're able to get your tickets, they're very affordable, $25 Thursday night. If you can't go, at least consider it, and so that we can help put some money towards ending men's homelessness.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Was there any other items of new business? Deputy Mayor Taylor.
I had this come to me while we were sitting here, and I just wanted to thank our communications manager, Mallory Cunningham. I thought that the video she put together was amazing that went out, lots of public comments about it, and kudos to her. I thought all of you were very well spoken, so kudos to everybody else. I kind of brought down the group, but nonetheless, it was fun, and I thought she was amazing, so I just wanted to do that public call out for Ms. Cunningham.
Okay, we are into question period. Is there any member of the public who would like to ask a question here tonight? Mr. Christo. Can you please turn on the mic? And just introduce yourself and your address, please.
It's on? Okay. Anyway, Madam Mayor, Member of Council, Deputy Mayor, Member of Staff, members of the public, good evening. The reason I'm here tonight is related to the sign bylaw. I know I had to wait this long. I wish the question period would have been way before that. So I hope in consideration of that, maybe in the future, you guys should have a question period well in advance than the last agenda. But anyway, relate to the sign bylaw. I don't agree with the previous sign bylaw that you can place signs on certain street and you cannot put signs on other street. To me, it's uncalled for. It's very simple. If you ask the member of a public to place a sign on their, in front of their houses, you should be able to put a sign in the town boulevard, because the person takes care of the boulevard. I understand that the town owns it. But that's not the point. The point, the resident is the one that cuts the grass and maintains the boulevard. So it's very simple. If you put in front of an industry, you ask the industry if they're okay with the sign. If you ask in front of a business, I did here Style Essential, for example. I asked them if it was okay to put a sign in front of their business. So they said it was okay. So it's not a big deal. Now, if you want to eliminate the number of signs, that's a different issue. But I tend to agree. The signs brings the name forward of the candidate candidates, especially for the new ones. So you have to think about it. When I was here before, there was never the situation. You created a problem with the previous bylaw that I think they drove the bylaw enforcement insane. They had to rush all over the place, picking up signs. That should never happen. Now, if the owner of the property calls the bylaw because somebody puts a sign in front of their home, then they have every right to go and remove it. So I hope you will consider that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gristo. And when that comes back to council, I saw Madam Clerk taking notes, so we appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. But the one that I mentioned, I want to make this sure, please, and I ask you, please, question period should be well before, not at the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a nice evening and happy holidays, everyone here and everyone at home.
Same
Thank
to you,
you.
Mr. Gristo. Thank you so much. Was there any additional members? Yep. Mr. Ramsey, come on up and just state your name and address for the record, and the mic is already on for you.
Good evening. My name is Noel Ramsey. I live on 15 Feed Street here in Orangeville. Your Worship, I've got a couple questions and I'll keep them really short. They are kind of unrelated and to Mr. Gristo's comment. Most of my questions actually came as a result of what was said here today. So it's good that I'm at the end. Hopefully I don't drag it out too long here. My first question is with regards to the budget meeting that was held last week. Each department in town here, or not each department, but many of the departments in town here have very significant budgets like Parks and Rec, Public Works and stuff like that. And when the public is looking online at the data, at the budget numbers and stuff like that, and hearing you discuss it or the presentations that's given, we take into account that the numbers are taken very seriously. The last budget meeting, the first one I assume it was, there was a number banted around with regards to the sale of the railway, which I thought would be something that was like cast in stone in the finance department. So for the record, I think it's worthwhile that we have someone from council or from staff state what the value is, because I heard 37 million and I heard 32 million. So the first,
Yeah, I can tell you it's 32 million was the total sale of the railway. And there will be further explanation when we go into the budget meetings in January. The meeting that we had last week was just the ceremonial tabling of the budget for council. And we will go into depth with each department and how we move forward in January.
yeah. I think something like that, when it's being presented though in the public, needs to be really firm. They should be, I hate to be critical, but it is actually a critical point that they should know. The second question I've got is with regards to bylaw enforcement and the plan around it. Looking at the budget, I saw around $430,000 for bylaw enforcement. The notes in there said that there was two bylaw officers and 2 part-time officers. It also referenced a service agreement with Mulmar and Mount Melanthon. I don't know if there's any service agreements with any other areas as well. I just saw those notes. My concern is, or question is, in our area, my area, along McCarthy Street, as well as I've seen on social media, other people have commented that there are these parking meters that have the orange bags on it. They're going to be pulling the bags off, and new parking zones are going to be enforced in January. I may be wrong with this, but this is what I've heard.
That's one side of the street parking.
Correct.
Mr. Ramsey.
But it's additional no parking. So with the bylaw officers staff that we've got, the headcount that we got in place now, is there any plan to increase the number of bylaws officers? Because today we have to actually call on bylaw officers to investigate an infraction. And if you're going to increase the workload, whether it be for noise or additional parking, personally, what I've personally seen, I've been discussing with the clerk, the enforcement of parking in a particular area, to me, doesn't seem to be adequate, and we have further discussions going on with that. But is there a plan to increase the number of enforcement that's available?
I can turn that over possibly to Madam Clerk or to Ms. Landry. Rock, paper, scissors. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
So through your worship, with respect to the bylaw resourcing question, if I could put it that way, certainly as the responsibility envelope grows, my intent would be that the resourcing associated to be able to properly implement some of these programs would also grow along with it. Mr. Ramsey is correct. There are 2 service agreements currently in place with Mulmer and Melanchthon for bylaw enforcement services. Those agreements are on a cost recovery basis. So wherever we do provide those services, we are one-to-one recovering the costs for that. As we see there to be a need for more resources, we definitely will bring that forward to council, and I think there will be some of those discussions had at budget time with respect to the resourcing needs within the clerk's division, and then obviously with bylaw being included as part of that. But if Ms. Landry wants to add anything to that, then I can certainly turn over the time.
Ms. Landry, do you have anything to add?
She covered it perfectly.
Wonderful. Mr. Ramsey, I hope that answers your question.
And the last question was something that came up with regards to the hydro presentation. And Councillor Taylor, you identified or had a question with regards to a reduction in the dividend. And I just took note, and I may have got it wrong, but I took note that the dividends are based on the previous year's costs and revenue. But the explanation given for the dividends decreasing was an additional headcount going forward in 2023 of 19 to 20 additional headcount. That doesn't add up. If you're looking at last year's dividend payout going down, which is what you were questioning, the future additional headcount shouldn't impact last year's dividend payout.
Deputy Mayor Taylor?
I can try my best. I don't have the document in front of me. However, it was, let's pretend it was 2020. You took the amount of their revenue, you divided that by 50%, you came up with a dividend payment would be in 2021. If they had other expenses above that line, it would reduce the amount of profit that they had. And so you would divide that out. I'm not the treasurer for the hydro board, but it made sense to me when she was explaining it. It would be an expense because they're adding an additional body. And let's assume an additional body these days with budget, salaries, benefits, all that stuff's 100,000. That would come off that amount. It would reduce the amount of your pool available to divide the 50% by and have that amount. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it's
Natasha, if you've got a better assessment than I do, but that made sense to me when she was describing her rationale for it.
I'm satisfied if it's something that can be answered later, but again, it doesn't make sense that they're taking into account headcount they haven't hired yet when the dividends are paid out on the previous year. And if someone can get back to me, that's fine too.
Well, in the business plan, it's talking about the next 5-year plan. So it wasn't this year that we were looking at dividends for. It was future years. He was saying a reduction in future years. Yeah.
My apologies, I missed that. I thought
Nope, that's okay.
it was a dividend being paid this year.
No.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, it dipped in 24 and 20, or 25 and 26. I think it dipped, and that's where my confusion was, because I'm excited to see that dividend going up, not it going down, and I wanted to understand what it was.
Talking about the dividend for this year.
Yeah.
Paid it. And lastly, on the sign bylaw, when you're discussing future sign bylaws, please keep in mind that in our town, I get 7 votes for council. In most other municipalities, except for Vancouver, it has a jurisdiction like you only get 1 vote for councillor and 1 vote for mayor. So at worst, you would see each individual only pushing to have 2 signs, unless they had school board interests as well. So if you do have an interest in 7 representatives, you also have to keep in mind how wide your lot is, and some of the, especially the townhomes, those lots are like 19, 20 feet wide. Mine happens to be 55. On our street, I probably had the most number of signs in the whole area.
You did have a lot of signs. That was nice.
And we had a significant amount of discussion with people coming to us, as well as other people were asking to see, they were being directed to our property as far as who to vote for.
Yeah, and
we have a lot of influence in the community. So I mean, as the gentleman was presenting, that's part of democracy. You don't want to limit the number of chances that we have to voice our opinion.
No, and just to be clear, Mr. Ramsey, we're not looking at changing any of the numbers on private property. It was just looking at the public property allotments of signs and things like that. So your property, you can still have as many signs as you want. But we will take those notes. I see the clerk making notes as we go. Deputy Mayor Taylor, yep.
And I just want to make the point that, so your comment about the 7 votes, it's because we're at large. So if we went to a ward system, thank you, Councillor Andrews, if you went to a ward system, you would have 1 vote for 1 councillor and you would vote for the mayor and potentially the deputy mayor, maybe. But most places you have the 2 votes as you're describing. But until this town goes to a ward system, which, you know, as I've walked the town, I curse it because I think we should probably look at a ward system because it's getting large, but we're not there yet. So.
I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Not in place either. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Was there any member of the public online, Jerry? No, we were good. So any further questions for a question period from anybody in the gallery? Seeing none. Okay, we will move on to bylaws. There's a recommendation that the bylaws listed be read 3 times and finally passed. 19.1 is a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 22-90 is amended with respect to Lot 1, Block 5, Registered Plan 212, municipally known as 3 Zina Street, Randall Realty Inc., RZ 2022-03. 19.2 is a bylaw to authorize the entering and an execution of an encroachment agreement with Randall Realty Inc. regarding 3 Zina Street. 19.3 is the bylaw to exempt a portion of Registered Plan 216 Part Lot Control, Duncan Shaw, 41 William Street, PLC-2022-01. And finally, 19.4, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held tonight, December 12th, 2022. Motion, please. Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor. Was there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. And I do need a motion to adjourn. Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Stevens, all in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. We will see you in January. Happy holidays.